everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for another week of Remax Executive Podcast, named Podcast, because we haven't officially named it yet. This week, I have the pleasure of interviewing Scott Toney, who has been with Executive for about 12 years now. He is continuously at the top of our volume reports each month, and so he's doing a ton of sales in the Charlotte area, and he's been in Charlotte about 20 years now, since 1999. So I want to just talk to Scott today. So his background, he started off in Bank of America, working as a senior VP, focusing on national loan operations, and then moved on to the marketing side of things for the bank, looking at real estate, affordable housing, historic preservation, and community development. So Scott, if you don't mind, kind of tell us how that transitioned you into real estate.
Sure, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to participate in the podcast today. I think even a little bit before Bank of America, which Bank of America was the bank I ended up working for, but the legacy bank I started with was Barnett Bank in Florida. And I went to school at University of Florida, and one of the business classes I took was a basic real estate class that if you completed the class and got credit for it, it acted as your pre-training to take the license test for the state. And that was my first interest in real estate. And things probably worked out for the best. I think, at sometimes I thought maybe I should have jumped right into real estate from college, but I think my time at the bank probably prepared me better for what I'm doing now. And really my journey at the bank, I was, fully immersed into the corporate environment, loved what I was doing. I learned a lot, and it was a great training ground. And really, when I transitioned from commercial loan operations to the commercial real estate side of the bank and working for community development in particular, we talked a lot about affordable housing. We did historic tax credits and injected money back into communities that were distressed so that we could build housing, we could build infrastructure. And when I would travel to some of these cities and see the work on the ground that we were doing and seeing people become homeowners, it really ignited that passion in me to say, hey, I might want to take this a step further and be like hands-on on the front line selling real estate. So my journey started in one fashion, and then it ended with me being where I am now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We actually have quite a few agents in our company that not only came from Bank of America, but a lot of those large bank companies. And so they've, through one way or another, kind of made their way into the real estate industry. I mean, I don't know if it's just going from the structure of the corporate world to eventually losing your mind and wanting to kind of take control of your own destiny, but we do have a lot of ex-bank employees here. So now you've been in real estate itself for about 25 years. What are kind of some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the real estate industry just in general?
Yeah, when I was first exposed to real estate, and this is back in Florida, and even before I began practicing as a realtor, I remember the books that they used to have to show you listings. Their computer use was almost non-existent, and you would actually look at books that were updated periodically to show you available inventory. And when I first started practicing in real estate, even just in the last 12 years, I've seen a ton of changes. I mean, it went from a very specific type of industry where the business practices were very standard. There was a very black and white way of conducting real estate business, of getting listings, of helping people purchase homes. And this is even when we went into the digital age, which really helped create a lot more efficiencies and made a much better process for buyers. They could see inventory. It was an easier way to communicate, but not. The digital age, I think, was a benefit for everybody. Having computers, having MLS has been a boon to our industry. But I think the biggest change I've seen, and it's one I haven't really wrapped my head around yet, and I've been a little resistant to, are just all of the iBuyers that are out there now, the open doors, the offer pads. It's, in some sense, a revolutionary way of doing business. I know a lot of agents feel like it takes away maybe some of the personal side of what we do, the trust, the relationship building. I have to say, probably in all the years that I've been exposed to our industry, that has been the one biggest change, the iBuyers. Yeah.
Well, it kind of ties into, I feel like, from going from the booklets where you're looking at your listings to being able to go onto your phone and literally just flip through anything that's active online. Like the speed of the whole industry process in general has totally changed. So as far as Charlotte's concerned, what are kind of the biggest changes you've noticed here in this market?
Yeah, so in the Charlotte market, and I kind of think of Charlotte, I personally equate Charlotte to our MLS coverage area, which is Charlotte, Concord, a little bit of South Carolina, everything that we look at. And I think the biggest change for me is I was fascinated when I first got into real estate, and I would see that agents were very siloed in the areas that they serviced. There were agents that they were known as Myers Park agents or Dilworth agents or Ballantyne, and that was all they did. And on one hand, it was good in a sense because they were experts in their area, which you really need to be. If you don't understand a subdivision, maybe some very specific covenants and restrictions, if roads are maintained privately, if water has to be brought in from a private company versus City of Charlotte, in some sense, it was good that we had those agents that were segmented by subdivision or part of town. But the biggest change I've seen since then is that agents, because they're using the internet to market and because they're getting referrals maybe from all over the country, they're getting clients. The agent may have entered the business thinking they were going to focus, hopefully, in Myers Park, but they get a client that needs to shop in Ballantyne, and they've had to adapt and they've had to learn about different areas and really become an expert in those areas so that they can best serve their clients. So I'm seeing a big change for me has just been seeing agents move from a very neighborhood specific approach to having to be able to be nimble and really able to buy and sell all over our coverage area.
Yeah, well, you know where the business is, right? And inventory is low, so you kind of just have to make it work no matter what. So who specifically for you are your kind of clients? Like, do you work in a specific area? Do you work with people moving, into their second homes or?
Yeah, kind of going back to what I said before, I think I had an idea of what kind of clients I would work with. And of course, we all want to work with high dollar clients.
Of course.
But I don't have one specific set of client that I deal with. I don't have one particular area that I work in. So really my clients come from all spectrums, all parts of the country, and really all price ranges. I mean, I have done plenty of transactions right around the $100,000 mark and have done them gratefully and happily, all the way up to over, in the millions. But I can't say that I have one particular type of client.
Okay. And this kind of segues in, though, you're saying you're grateful and you're happy kind of for whatever type of client comes your way. In our research, when we always have to do a little bit of background research whenever we have someone in here. So you're actually known as being one of the nicest realtors, whether you believe this or not, one of the nicest realtors in the Charlotte area. We've looked up your reviews, and I mean, it's reviews from not just your clients, but agents that you've had cross sales with. Like, they love you. So customer satisfaction is clearly, whether you realize it or not, a big deal for you. How do you kind of maintain this level of customer satisfaction throughout your business?
That's very nice to hear. And thank you for saying that. It's something I do think I work hard on. And going back to my time at the bank, we had something called a sunset policy. I mean, you come from corporate America, and I'd love to hear more from you about what you took from corporate America and what you're doing now. But we had a sunset policy that we had to respond to our clients before the sunset, which really in those days was before 5 p.m. That was your work day. And communications, whether they were written or verbal, were very important. And I think what's, helped me have clients that are satisfied is that I really try to knock myself out to make sure that I'm constantly communicating with them. I want to go above and beyond, which is maybe an overused term, but I never want them to, I want to offer them information and answer questions before they start getting stressed about it and they ask me. For example, if we know that part of the due diligence period is to have an appraisal done, I don't want them to ask me, hey, when's the appraisal going to happen? I'll talk to their lender and I will let my client know that an appraisal is going to happen next Tuesday. And then I'll set the expectation of, hey, don't expect to hear back on Wednesday. It could be 3 or 5 working days. Then I try to get the appraisal information before they start worrying about it and ask me.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to them about when due diligence is going to expire and let them know that we've accomplished all the tasks we need to accomplish so that they're not in fear of losing earnest money deposit or due diligence fees. So really, for me, the whole key to the customer satisfaction is constantly communicating, giving too much information rather than not enough. And also, and I'm giving a long answer, but I try to make it fun for them. Buying a house is one of the most stressful experiences. And it doesn't mean that you can't joke with your clients.
Yeah.
You can't pick up some cookies or some muffins and, talk a little bit at a house, see what their kids are up to and try to remember what they tell you their likes and dislikes and hobbies are and just make it a little bit more fun for them, because a lot of people approach it thinking it's going to be a terrible experience. And it's a good feeling when at the end of it, it's been a pretty decent experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a really rewarding experience in the end. I mean, they're getting a new home or they're selling their home so they can move on to the next phase of their life. It is exciting. I think it's really important that you talk about communication like that. Like, I've learned just from some of my management practices and things that when you don't provide people with information, that's when they go in and they kind of create their own story. And that's usually when the freak out factor comes in. Like, if they don't hear from you saying, oh, the inspection was great, everything's fine, let's move forward, then they're going to be sitting there just thinking about it over and over and over. Like, why hasn't he messaged me back about the inspection? Is there something wrong with the house? Are we going to lose this contract? Well, and then it just spirals, and then you end up doing more kind of damage control for something that was never even an issue than just being able to have a conversation with your clients and move on.
You said something great just now, Sarah. You said that clients create their own story. Mm-hmm. And that's something I just want to say out loud again so that we can all sort of absorb that and think about it as agents, because you said something incredibly profound to me. You're right. If you leave a client up to their own devices and you leave them with no communication for days at a time, you described perfectly what I was trying to say before. They create their own story. They start worrying. They see worst case scenarios. Mm-hmm. Then they start feeling, the next step is they start feeling like my agent doesn't care. They're not communicating. So exactly. Then why wouldn't an open door or an offer pad seem attractive when they feel like they're not getting above and beyond from their sort of live agents? So that's a great concept I'm going to carry with me, so thanks.
Of course. So I think a part of it as well is, at least from what I've seen, is that you're extremely organized. So you have these templates that you use, right, for your clients. And even for agents on the other side, attorneys and vendors that you're working with that you send out at different times throughout the transaction. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I'm pretty technically proficient and I can use any app. I can do anything on the computer, but I really keep it simple for myself. I don't have a contact management system. I don't pay for any of the tools that I'm using. I simply go into my Outlook and I created 4 templates. And one of them is a required document package for buyers. One's a required document package for sellers. One's a contract package once we're under contract, and one is a next steps email for my clients once we're under contract. And I'm going to take just a minute to tell you what I do with those and how I created them. So the required documents template or email. This is, let's say I've taken on a new listing and I've made my first contact with the sellers. One of the first things I'm going to do is get a working with real estate agents form disclosure signed. That's number one. The next thing I want to do is I want to give them some tools to get us started. So I have an email, I have attachments to it that I update as forms update through the years. And I just let my sellers know that as part of getting their home ready to list, this email and these attachments are the first of a few things that we're going to be working on together. And that I've attached documents to this email that are required of me to give them by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, and that these documents are for their review and don't require signatures, and I look forward to discussing the documents with them. And I also let them know that I've discussed 2 documents that we will ultimately prepare together and they will sign. And what I give them in that package is the exclusive right to sell listing agreement, because I want them to be able to read that prior to me sending it to them for electronic signatures, and I want them to understand what that document means. I give them the property disclosure form, which is another document that we'll complete together. At that time, I go ahead and ask them the questions that I need to know the answers to complete the listing agreement. There are items 3, items 12 on the listing agreement, which deal with, have they filed bankruptcy? Did they intend to? Who is their lender? What is their balance due? What's the phone number for the lender? This is all like a one quick way for me to establish contact, give them some tools they need, but also start gathering information. I give them the Protect Your Family from Lead brochure, the Professional Disclosures PDF, Q&A on home inspections, mineral oil gas rights disclosure, a copy of the offer to purchase, because I want them to see, and I'm required to give it to them, but I want them to see what they can expect when they do get an offer on their home. So that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of questions, and I don't want to have to recreate that every time I have a new listing. So I save that email along with, the verbiage that I wrote, the way I introduce myself. I save it. I save the attachments. And then every time I know that I'm going to have a new listing, I simply forward the template to that new customer, and I customize the greeting to them, and it literally saves me hours. I'm not going to go into every template that I use. There's 4 of them, but one other one that I use that's incredibly helpful, and I'll go into a little bit of detail, is my contract package template. This one has helped me immensely. So once I'm under contract with a buyer, I have a template that it states, "Hi everybody, I want to introduce all the involved parties to this transaction to each other, and that this email is being copied to," and I list the closing attorney's name, the paralegal's name, the listing agent, my name, my customer's name, and the lender's name. So now we're all copied. We get a copy of the offer to purchase. We get a copy of the signed disclosures. We used to get copies of checks before they were no longer required. I identify in that template when the due diligence period expires, when I request a closing date and closing time, and it gets everybody on the same playing field, and it sort of tees off a successful start for the transaction. Another thing I do is I copy orders at executive title and executive insurance on that email, because that's my way of letting Allie and Lydia know, hey, couple of things. Number one, I'm going to be asking you for a preliminary title report. Secondly, these are potential customers for us. So now Allie and Lydia can reach out to my clients, which I like for them to do because my clients find it to be of great value. They can reach out and try to sell our insurance services, and Lydia can helpfully locate a prior title policy to send to the attorney so that the attorney elects to use executive for the title insurance. So again, this is just the best practice for me, and probably more than anything I do, I get the most feedback from other agents, attorneys, lenders that, thank you so much. This has made this transaction much easier for us. And I'm not just doing it to be a good guy or because I like to be organized. It also saves me time, because if I send out 5 different emails, one to the attorney, then a day later, the listing agent asks me for a copy of the contract. Oh, and then 2 days later, my folks might want to inquire about insurance, so let me send it to Lydia. I've wasted a lot of my own time. So those are some of the organizational things I do that make me comfortable, that keep me on target, but have also, I think, contributed to me being very efficient with my time and not having to work crazy hours.
Yeah, it's definitely a more proactive approach to all of it, so you're not having, like you said, to send out multiple emails or get in contact with people later on. Everything is kind of done up front, and you can rely, nice plug for title and insurance, but you can rely on our in-house resources to kind of help facilitate some of the steps in the closing process.
Yeah, and with you being our brand manager, and you've worn a lot of different hats in executive and have seen a little bit of everything, like behind the scenes, what are some things you see agents do that are efficient, and what are some things that are inefficient that if you could coach them, it would make their job easier and maybe make them be more successful, make more money?
I definitely think, as far as making your lives a little bit easier, just kind of having a process. So like, this is kind of your process. So when you get a new client, whether it's a listing or a buyer client, you're going to automatically send them this email. You're going to get them through this kind of process until close. And I think a lot of the times agents don't get that organized up front, and like it sounds like a hassle to create these templates, but then once you have them done, like you said, your life is going to be so much easier. It's the agents that don't have their process lined up, and so each transaction is almost like a new hurdle for them. And so I mean, in training and stuff, we try to teach different processes to keep you guys more efficient, but at the same time, there's only so much that we can do. We can show you how to use zip forms and create these different templates and kind of do the little things to change your process, but in the end of the day, it does come down to the individual agent. But
yeah. And I'm happy to share these templates if anyone's listening and wants me to give them copies. I'm glad to do it. If you think it'll help you, you can tweak them and customize them to make them work best for your practice.
Yeah, and I think even the part that you mentioned where you're writing down the little things like the due diligence period and connecting them with all these different people, I mean, yes, it's all in the contract, or yes, you can send them a separate email, but for them to be able to have one email with all that info is awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the clients love it. Now, you did touch on one thing when you were talking about it in your templates. You send out kind of like samples of the listing agreement before you actually DigiSign them, copies of the listing agreement.
Right.
I think that's really important to point out because yes, just being able to throw, an e-signature on a document and send it out to your clients really quickly is, again, super efficient. But a lot of the times we have agents that then get into a little bit of trouble with their clients because the client claims they didn't know something or they didn't see that on the contract when they signed it the first time, because we all know when you click the e-signature, it just zips you through a whole document.
Right.
So you're signing on to things that, sometimes the clients don't even realize. So have you noticed that sending them samples like that helps?
I think it's a combination of sending the samples, but also importantly, making sure that I review it with them.
Okay.
So I want to point things out to them way ahead of time. I want to make sure I really explain what dual agency means and not just what they think it might mean. Let my buyers know that, hey, this is about me serving you and having a fiduciary responsibility to you and protecting your confidentiality. But here's what this buyer's agency agreement says that you owe to my firm. You can't just go out and buy a for sale by owner or go talk to an agent on site and think it's okay if you use them, because I think we've all learned the hard way when that happens.
Yeah.
So I like to give them the printed copy ahead of time, not just when they're signing, but I also make sure to have that conversation with them to review those documents, because otherwise, every time I've assumed that it's really black and white and that they'll understand it are the times I've probably gotten in trouble.
Yeah. Well, just for you, it's second nature just to, you know everything on those forms front and back. But for clients, sometimes I think they feel a little more confident and then they get into the nitty gritty of the closing, and that's when they start to kind of have questions on things. Now, you're also on the grievance committee, which is now the professional standards committee. How did you wind up over there?
Yeah, so actually those are two different committees. I started on the grievance committee and spent, I think, 4 years on that one. And I think maybe it was Karush that first introduced me to the idea about becoming more involved with the association, and I'm glad he did. The grievance committee is similar to what we would think of as a grand jury, for lack of a better word. When a complaint comes in against a real estate professional to now called Canopy, when a complaint comes in, the grievance committee looks at the facts as presented and then makes a yes or no decision to move the complaint forward to the professional standards committee, which actually hears the case. I'm now on the professional standards committee. I've chaired a few of our committee hearings and they're incredibly interesting. I mean, just some of the stuff you see would make your toes curl. And every time I participate, I learn a lot.
So what are kind of the most common ethics violations that you're seeing, or just standards violations?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one standard type we see the most, and as much as I would like to, I can't talk about the individual cases that I've seen or been able to hear, but really it's almost kind of scary, Sarah, because what we see is all of the violations are just violations of very basic real estate practice law, and even more so the Code of Ethics and the 17 articles and standards of practice that are associated with them. So it's just little stuff, about, are you honoring another agency relationship? Are you being honest in all your dealings with your clients? It's stuff that you should know, within your first couple of weeks of real estate school. And I'm really proud of the folks at Remax Executive, because the level of knowledge and professionalism that I see all of us display really far exceeds some of the stuff I'm seeing as part of this grievance committee and professional standards committee. So,
well, yeah, because there's like how many, 10,000, 15,000 licensed agents in the Charlotte area now? Like, it's crazy.
yeah.
I mean, the schools that they bring on like 100 people at a time through these classes.
Yeah.
So it's only going to get a little bit crazier, I think, until the market kind of slows down and we lose some of those people that are only in it part-time. But so kind of switching gears here, I do want to talk to you just with your experience. How do you feel about social media? So I tried to do some stalking before this podcast, but it looks like you have chosen to stay away from social media. And I'm just curious, you know, everyone has a choice in that, and I wanted to hear what your opinion on it was.
Yeah, I don't think I purposely stay away. Like, I think there's something wrong with it. It's just my whole practice is about personal relationship building, and that's how I get my referrals. So I have a Facebook account. It's really a personal Facebook account. I don't have a business Facebook account. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Instagram. And really, since I don't use social media as part of my practice, you might say, well, how do you get your clients, or what kind of marketing do you do? And the truth of the matter is, I spend $0 per year on marketing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, well, and I'll slightly modify that, but here's the extent of my marketing. It's all about relationship building. And I'm so determined to make sure my clients have a good experience that, I'm just thrilled and honored all the time how many of my clients call me and they refer somebody to me. Then those people refer somebody to me. And it's always really kind of cute, because what will happen is they'll contact me and they'll say, hey, I hope you don't mind, but my sister who's moving to Charlotte needs to buy a house. And I'm like, don't mind, are you kidding me? I would love to, thank you. And I make it a point to tell people, and I mean it very sincerely, but I can always tell sort of a light bulb goes off in their head, and it's meaningful to them. Is, I'll tell my clients, if they sort of overthank me for doing something, I will very honestly tell them, like, hey, you're paying my mortgage payment. You trusting me with your business is what's paying my bills. So back to marketing dollars. I don't spend any money on advertising. I don't farm. I don't send out mailings, none of that. The extent of my marketing dollars are twofold. I try to do something nice at closing for my clients, write them handwritten notes. I learned this in a class that I took about 4 or 5 years ago when I wanted to jumpstart my business. I attended one of the classes that Al Mirabelli was facilitating for us. And I used to hate those kind of classes at the bank, and I swore I would never participate in another sort of what I called like a rah-rah class. But it really reminded me of something very simple: handwritten notes, showing your clients that you're thinking of them. And so I send out handwritten notes throughout the year to my clients, sometimes just to check in. And a couple of my marketing things I do is at the beginning of every year, and this results in probably two referrals a year. Around January 10th, when I know everybody's back from holiday, I send out an electronic copy of the ALTA settlement statement, closing disclosure, whatever you want to call it. I will send that to all of my clients from the previous year. And I'll say something to the effect of, hi, Sarah, you may not remember at settlement, but the attorney said that there may be some tax deductible items on this form. I know it's easy to misplace these forms, so I've attached a copy for your reference when you talk to your tax planner this year. And that usually gets me 1 or 2 deals a year. And another thing I've done is I'll buy a few $100s worth of Girl Scout cookies every year. I tie them up with a nice jute string, put my business card on it, a Remax sticker, and I'll hand deliver 2 or 3 boxes to probably, my top 15 or 20 clients that refer to me.
Yeah.
Or people that I want to kind of kickstart to refer to me. So really, just for my marketing budget's like $300 a year plus closing gifts.
That's awesome.
That has helped me build the relationships to stay busy.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, so for those of you that attended our July company meeting, Hadi did his presentation on kind of like going back to the basics, kind of fostering relationships. You can buy so many things online. You can buy leads online, pay to Zillow and do that. But really what it comes down to is like what you're saying, is just fostering those relationships. And, you helped one couple purchase a home, then eventually their kids are going to need a home, or their friends are going to need a home, or whatever it is. So, I mean, I think that's amazing that you can just rely on your referral business. I mean, maybe it goes back to you being the nicest real estate agent in Charlotte, but no, I mean, I think that's amazing. So do you do any type of like regular email campaigns, or is it kind of just like what you mentioned before? Or?
No regular email campaigns. The only sort of formal email I do is that the closing disclosure at the beginning of the year for tax purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you keep track? Because I know you mentioned earlier, you ask them about their life, which you would think more people would do that, but a lot of times you're focused on the transaction or the task at hand. But I think it's really important you're talking about, you're asking them about their life, their kids, what they're doing, what they enjoy doing for fun, that kind of thing. Do you house any of that in any type of CRM, or do you have a special notebook?
That's a great question, and you're bringing up something I forgot to talk about. I don't use a contact relationship management system, but I use, again, this is for agents, maybe some that are starting out that don't have a lot of budget for marketing. I just use an Excel spreadsheet, and every client I get, and I keep it by year, the year I get the client, so I can go back to any year. I'll put the client's name, if they're a buyer or seller, who referred them to me, how I gained the business, their current address, their children's names, so I remember their children's names, and then if I know their birthdays or any other odd bits of information. I mean, I'm going to go out of my way to collect it for every client, but especially once a client becomes one of my good referral sources, I try to know everything about them and participate in it. And then in my phone, I'll have, I'm just making up a name, Ben and Leslie Smith. And then I know I'll forget their daughter's name. So I put their names in, I spell the names correctly, I get birthdays. And it's very much like this old book, Norman Vincent Peale, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it can seem a little hokey, but what makes it not hokey is when you really mean it from the heart and you're inquiring and you want to know how they spell their name. You want to know when their birthday is, and you want to show them you appreciate them. And all of this is stuff you can do that doesn't cost a penny.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's crazy because we're moving into this digital age where everything is more efficient, and you don't even have to talk to people if you don't want to buy or sell your home. But I'll speak as a millennial. Sometimes it's nice to meet somebody that is the opposite of that, like you're not always looking to just click a button on a computer and buy and sell your home. Sometimes you want to foster a relationship, and the people that can maybe step up and ask you more personal questions and connect with you on a more personal basis, that's going to be the person you think of when you go to sell your home or buy a home or ask a friend if they're in help or needing any help with that kind of stuff. So I think that's really great. Now, to somewhat change the subject on you, I wanted to talk a little bit more about your personal side. So I did know that you, outside of being a real estate agent, you also show dogs.
Yes,
so
I do.
How did you get into that?
Yeah, so I stay busy outside of being an agent. I'm a lifelong tennis player, grew up skiing on the water, fishing. I like to garden. And then my family has been involved in dogs ever since I was a kid. And we had German Shepherds, and we did professional training. We showed a couple of other breeds. I got out of it because I was busy with college and life. And then, gosh, I guess 19 years ago, I got involved in a breed called the Japanese Chin. And I have a great partner. Her name's Susan. And we do, occasionally we'll breed a litter. We exhibit our dogs around the country. We had the thrill of winning Best of Breed at Westminster a couple of years ago, and I was the owner handler. We were on TV. It was, Madison Square Garden. It was really cool. So they're great companions. We are not in it for any kind of business. There's no money to be made. You spend money, you don't make money. But Susan's husband's a veterinarian, so we have this nice, tight-knit little group, and we really enjoy the hobby. We travel around the country. I'm going to Wales next month to visit a quote dog friend versus my other friends. I call them civilians. Going to visit a dog friend, but also I'm taking my nephew with me. We're going to do that and do a little sightseeing. And it makes me want to ask you, Sarah, because again, I have a lot of respect for you because I think you're, the ultimate professional in our office. You've worn a lot of hats. You're always in the office. You answer questions for us. I think the whole time I've known you, I've seen you once at Harris Teeter. I don't know anything about you.
I flagged you down.
Yeah, so to take the spotlight off me and maybe a nice way to end the podcast, like I think we would all like to know, like tell us a little more about you, your hobbies, what you like to do, like who you are outside of executive.
So, that's a lot of questions. So I guess right now my life is a little weird. So I'm in school. I'm getting my master's, my MBA in marketing. So like my social life is like a little put on pause right now. But other than that, I mean, I've been in Charlotte for about 5 years now. And this was the city that I got to choose. So, it was my first big, adult decision to move here. And I've absolutely loved it. And so just watching the city grow, I love going around and trying all the new restaurants and going to live music shows. I actually do really love live music. Been getting a little bit more into hiking, which I think is nice. But yeah, my parents are up in Asheville, so I get to go visit them, and then I'll get to go hiking every time that I get to go see them. But
so seeing that you work with a bunch of crazy realtors and you're on the business side of it, when you obtain your MBA, do you see yourself staying in the real estate industry? Do you ever want to become a realtor and help people buy and sell properties? Like what's your future look like as it relates to real estate or not?
So I've actually, when I got into this job, for those of you that didn't know, I actually started at the front desk and then quickly realized that I don't do well sitting in one spot for a long period of time. So that's kind of how I have slowly made myself into this events and training position. And the training position, I've always liked kind of like the teaching side of things. I thought about being a teacher in college. There's not a lot of money in teaching. So it's kind of been something that's kind of fallen into my lap. And I think the real estate industry is really interesting because it is changing so much and so quickly. So I definitely could see myself staying in this realm. And obviously with RE/MAX Executive, as long as they'll have me. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just have to see.
That's good to know. I think it's nice when we all can learn a little bit more about each other.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and answering all of our questions. And like you said, if you don't mind sharing some of those templates, I can include your email.
Yeah, absolutely. You can give my email, phone number. They can email, text, or call me. And any and everything I've talked about, I'm happy to share or answer questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Until next week.